Hello and welcome to another video trying to get you the very top grades. Today I'm going to focus on the descriptive question and imagine a picture in the exam that was like one of these, a really wrinkled old man's face. A student has emailed their description in, so we're going to look at what this student was trying to achieve. And from their description I'm going to teach you these 6 key things. Those will be what you will learn specifically in this video. And we'll visit the Marc Scheme and look at the top band so that you can understand what it is the examiner's looking for, and I'll translate all this examiner's speak into things that you can understand. So the email I had was, hi sir, I'm currently in year 11 and I've been working on the description question on language paper 1. I wrote this description of a photograph of an old man. So the first thing you need to concentrate on here is this idea of working. This is a student who's going to get better because they see getting better as a job. It's something that they're really prepared to graft at. And if you graft after this video, you will get a much higher mark. Then look what the student's done. Given it to their teacher. My teacher says I need to include more methods, especially imagery and extended metaphors. Now, I love this teacher. You can tell that this is a good teacher because they haven't said go and load it up with adverbs and adjectives and those things. They've gone for the ideas, metaphors and imagery which take you into the top band. Now, the next thing about this student is they've tried to use as much of it as possible, even when they're not really sure it's worked. And that's really important. You have to take risks in order to get better and practicing your writing. And then their final comment, thank you so much anyway. Your videos have massively improved my grades in both language and literature. Often students tell me something nice in order to get me to do something. But we already know this student is a hard worker and has already drafted and gone back to the teacher and is trying to improve further. And so this is a plea. Once you've watched this video, go away and try some writing and you'll genuinely get much better as if you try to apply what you've learned straight away. Right, well that was why redrafting is the key to a great mark. Let's look at paragraph structures, which I find teachers don't spend much time on. Well, without even reading the beginning of the story, you can instantly see that this is a student who is playing with paragraphs. So you've got this dust beginning here and then repeated as single words. Now, what that does to the examiner is it instantly says, look, I'm experimenting here with paragraphs, and I think that the effect I'm going to get through this repetition is going to be quite powerful on the reader. It's going to make them think quite deeply about what I'm describing. And so visually, the examiner wants to give you a high mark even before they've read a word. So I'm just going to shrink the description down just so that you can see what the paragraph structure looks like. And as we scan down, what you'll notice is there are frequent changes of paragraph. Now, I can't overemphasize how important that is. When it was emailed in to me, not all these paragraphs were in place. It's worth considering at this point what a paragraph does. It tells the reader that there's a change of some sort, and there are really only 3 changes. They each begin with T. So this is the way I teach paragraphs. It's for a change of time, or a change of topic, or a change of talk, person speaking. Well, we can ignore that one because this is a description. So every time there's a change of time or topic, there's a new paragraph. Now, the reason that's so important is when we go to the top level, this is where grades 7, 8 and 9 are, we can see that fluently linked paragraphs are a feature of writing at the very top band. So again, without even reading your description, the examiner is already moving towards putting you up in this band. But the reverse is also true. If you don't paragraph, then you're not fluently linking them and the examiner doesn't want to put you in the top band. And if we come to the band below, where grades 5 and 6 live, you still need paragraphs at the top of it, the top of that band. But if you're not always paragraphing, so you're only usually paragraphing, then you're at the bottom of band 3. So that's that's bad news, because that's probably putting you around grade 5. And what's interesting is whenever I sit with a student and I ask them to spot changes of time and changes of topic, they can do it. In other words, when students put a paragraph in, they're almost never wrong. There's like zero risk in putting a paragraph in, but as we've seen, a massive risk in not putting a paragraph in, because then it is wrong and then your grade suffers dramatically, as I've just shown you. Right, the other thing I teach all my classes is the idea of the motif. Now, a motif is simply a repeated image that just keeps coming through your description, or if you're writing a story, through your story. And we actually saw that at the beginning. The motif here is going to be dust, and obviously we associate dust with death. So at the end of the description, the student has given us this final line: he is dust, a clear allusion to this character having died. And we can see there that this motif works as a structure because the writer comes back to it at the end. And having that motif gives you this mark: invented use of structural features. So again, just putting a motif in forces the examiner to put you in the top level and give you grade 7, 8 or 9. Now, both of those are features of top writing which you can do even if you're currently at a grade 3 or grade 4. You know, there's nothing I've shown you there that you don't fully understand. You could do that tomorrow, and all right, you might not get all these up because that takes really skilled writing, but you will suddenly shoot up the Marc Scheme because the examiner uses best fit. You know, they look at all of the Marc Scheme, and if you've got some features from the top end, well then obviously they're going to improve your mark considerably. Now, the only way to do that is to go away and practice, isn't it? Go away and do it now. Go and practice paragraphing and having this structural feature. Well, not right this second, because I'm going to show you some of the story, the description. Right, let's just read. Dust, that word. It hits me suddenly, shocking me with its accuracy. Dust. That final day is forever in my mind, an unhealing scar, an insurmountable mutation. But it's not the shadow of a person that haunts my waking hours and dominates every dark corner of my dreams. There was no person left. When I saw him that morning, broken and lost in the whitewashed dawn, no word could have fitted him better. Dust. Right, let's focus here on the verbs. Now, probably half of the students I teach aren't confident in identifying verbs, so I'm going to ask you to pause the screen here, identify the verbs, and then I'm going to reveal them to you in a moment. Right, well, here they are. Let's spend a moment thinking about their job. So immediately, hits and shocking are very active verbs. They're powerfully violent, and that obviously creates a particular mood, doesn't it? It invites us to think that something dreadful is going to happen. Then the student gives us a sense of being oppressed. So they're haunted and these dreams are dominating them. So again, we've got this atmosphere of darkness and oppression. The character's very uncomfortable. Then we have a change to more neutral verbs. I simply saw him. There's no emotion to that. Could be positive or negative. And fitted, again, could be positive or negative. So we sense a change in mood here. Now, hopefully you can do this. Can you look at that paragraph and work out where there's a change of time or topic? Where's a change of time or topic? Pause it and check. Okay, it was here. This is where the time word is. It tells us immediately that there's a change of time. Now, hopefully, with these verbs, you can also see how useful the change of time is to the writer, because it's exactly the same moment that there was that change in mood. So hopefully you can see how important getting paragraphs right is to your writing. Now, another thing I always recommend to my students is the ability to just say yes. In other words, to start writing without worrying. So this student knows that they're going to focus on the idea of dust, and they know that this character's going to die by the end of it. But I think the rest is just launching into the writing. And you can see there that the writing at the beginning is good, but not as strong. So for example, this bit is a bit melodramatic. It's an unhealing scar in this person's mind. Well, that works. This could be a shocking event that will never leave them. That works really well. But then they've gone and added this extra bit with superb vocabulary, an insurmountable mutation. But actually the description doesn't need that. We already know it's an unhealing scar. That tells us everything we need to know. And we're not really sure what a mutation is here. You know, what's it mutated into and from? And how is a mutation insurmountable? Mountains are insurmountable if they're too big. But how do you get over and try and get over a mutation? It doesn't really work. It's over dramatic. Now, if we go back to the Marc scheme, we want something that as assuredly, that means super confidently, matched to purpose. So we've just seen a bit that isn't totally matched to the purpose. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't experiment with vocabulary, but what it does mean is that you need to redraft and look out for the bits where you've been trying too hard and what you've come up with doesn't quite fit. It nearly fits, but not quite. But now I want to show you a bit of a use of metaphor that I would have been so proud of having written myself. Never seen this done. It's genius. When I saw him that morning, broken and lost, in the whitewashed dawn. Now, this is superb. So he's thinking, or she's thinking, how would I describe the dawn here in a way that gives me the colour? So it's obviously just going to be white. We can imagine the bright sunshine. But there's this other idea. Well, what do we associate white with? Partly it's a new beginning or innocence, but that doesn't fit the old man where we're going to have death. So this student has said, right, how can I get the idea of white to imply death in some way? And when you whitewash something, you completely obliterate what was underneath. You can imagine if you had graffiti on your garage door or something, you know, you'd whitewash it and completely get rid of that and obliterate it. And that suggests that this person's life has literally been painted over with a white blank. And that fits perfectly as well with the idea of him turning to dust. He is no more. There's nothing left of him. And whitewashed conveys that brilliantly. It's just a superb use of metaphor. Now, if we carry on reading, you'll see that there's an extended metaphor where the dust doesn't just surround this old man. The old man is the dust. That's the extended metaphor. Let's see how that works. Perhaps it had taken centuries to collect, resting undisturbed. So fragile, so tender. It seemed as if the flutter of a butterfly's wing could have sent it spiralling into a fatal flurry. I pictured him being carried away like scraps of paper in the wind, each one treasuring some scribbled trivia, an address, a number, a name, a memory. So here we've got two descriptions going on at the same time. We have the dust that's presumably in this person's house, and it's being disturbed as the dead body is being carried away, or perhaps the still living body, but you know, can't live at home anymore. However, the description of the dust as like a butterfly's wing, emphasizing how fragile it is and how it's spiraling into a fatal flurry, which is an image of death, invites us also to think of the old man as already dust. So when he's picked up, the narrator can already see this person's body breaking apart and turning into dust even as it's lifted. And then that idea is built on further with this simile, like scraps of paper in the wind. So on the one hand, it's the dust that looks like scraps of paper in the wind, but even more imaginatively, it's the person himself being carried away who looks like scraps of paper. So he's so fragile, again, that he looks like he's breaking apart. And then the writer has done something beautiful. What they've said is, well, what would be on those scraps of paper that will remind me of this man's life? And look at what what they've got here. Scribbled trivia. And just using this, the idea of it just being scribbled down suggests that it's worthless. And the idea of it being trivial, is that it's worthless. And he's saying, look, this man's life, long as it was, has ended in nothing. It's as though his whole life was worthless. That's brilliant. And then we look at an address, a number, a name, a memory. And because we just focus on single things, there's only one address, there's only one number, only one name, only one memory. The student hints at what a pointless life this was. There's so little to show at the end of it. And it seems as though so little happened when this person was alive. And now we've got a really tragic piece of description. So you've got a taste there of how brilliant metaphor and brilliant simile works. I'm going to come back to alliteration in a minute, but I've also started to touch on the narrator's viewpoint. Okay, this whole description is made possible because our student is not describing a picture. Yeah, let's pick on one of our pictures here. So this one, he looks the weakest and most vulnerable to me. I'm going to click on him, and there's the image. Now, this student isn't describing the image at all. The image is making them ask a question. Right, who could this be? And what would I feel about them? And it's knowing what I would feel about them that's given this student the way to describe them. Okay, it's like they've just ignored the picture. As soon as they've seen it, the picture has given them an idea, and then they've dumped the picture and rarely come back to it. In fact, in the whole descriptive piece, this bit in yellow is the only bit that directly describes what the student is seeing in the photograph. His face was textured and rough, a littered minefield of folding scars, carved deeply by the merciless blades of time. I felt that if I could only stretch back those wrinkles, the glorious animation of his youth would spill out. And so here you can see they've gone in for another awesome metaphor where he's trying to recapture his youth as an old man, but can't, obviously, because time has aged him. But inside he still feels young, and he's desperate to feel that youth again, with this brilliant image of it wanting to spill out, and this fantastic description of the youth as not just animated and lively but glorious. It hints at the immense longing that this man has to relive his life and start again from the promise of when he was young, in contrast to this empty sort of life he seems to have led at the end. I wanted to unzip him, to peel back his skin, again just the most amazing metaphors, and remold his insides, another amazing metaphor, returning him to his former self. But as I searched his sunken eyes, nothing. And you can see now the sunken eyes are the only bits of physical description left that are coming from the photo. It's the metaphors that are really doing the work here. And if we go back up here, the idea of the lines and the wrinkles being folding scars is just an unbelievably original description. It gives us the idea of these sorts of really deep wrinkles that overlap each other. It's just fabulous. Or perhaps visually it gives you more of an image like this, folding scars. I just love that phrase. Never heard it before. Now if we go back to the idea of redrafting, we can see this description where the scars are a littered minefield. Now that doesn't work visually. A minefield is something waiting to explode or has exploded, and that doesn't work with the idea of folding scars. It's an opposite image. It's overly dramatic, and hopefully you get a sense when you're reading this is, well actually I could get rid of a littered minefield and just have a something or other of folding scars. You know, something like a weathered landscape. Or it might remind you of the trenches in the First World War. You know, you could make that sort of thing. but it's the minefield and explosions that doesn't quite work with the shape of these lines on the face, whereas folding scars works exactly with the shape of those lines. Right, let's now look back at the alliteration that we've seen. So let's explore the sounds that this student's created here. So at the beginning of this extract, you can see the alliteration of the W sound, and that creates a mournful sort of sound. It creates a sense of longing if you just listen to it out loud. Whitewashed dawn, no word. You know, you can feel the lament in it. And then we've got a fantastic use of sibilance that goes throughout this paragraph. Sibilance is where you repeat the consonant S. So fragile, so tender it seemed, sent it spiraling, scraps of paper, some scribbled trivia, an address. Again, this conveys perfectly that sense of longing and loss. And that's achieved by alliterating soft sounds. So we've had the S's, we've had the W, and F again is a soft sound here. If the flutter of a butterfly's wing. Fatal flurry. Again, soft sounds. And when we look at the word fatal, the harsh sound of the T works as a contrast. It suddenly shocks us out of this gentle mood, and that's deliberate because the word fatal gives us the idea of his death. So that jarring moment in sound works exactly with the jarring moment being described, which is the old man's death. And then the other thing that I'd like to show you is how the writer plays with repeated sounds. So we've got flutter, which is rhyming with butter in butterflies, and then look at the way that the M's are used in a number, a name, a memory. Now this is really hard to teach. It's really hard to teach this. The only way that you're going to grasp this is to write a paragraph like that where you're just thinking, right, I'm just going to rewrite this so that I've got sounds that create an emotion for me. And that's the easy way I can think of for you to learn it. Play with the sounds. In the first instance, take the sounds that our student here has tried. So you're going to use S's and you're definitely going to use W's, and just play with them to see what effects you can create. Now there's one other final thing that I want to say about this. If you just lifted these paragraphs, you could actually put them directly into any description that you were writing. For example, you could easily change the gender of the person being described to a woman, and it would fit. Even if the picture was of a very young woman, you could use contrast to show what she was like in her old age, which would be like this. You might get a picture of a landscape, and then you could just choose this character to put into the landscape. Now, if you're already writing at a grade 6 or 7, that will be a horrible idea for you, because you'll be thinking, no, I'm super creative, I'm going to try this myself and produce my own writing. But if you're stuck at a grade 3 or a 4, you could memorize this and just use it, adapting it to any bit of description that you do. And boom, your grade goes up dramatically. Now, if you'd like me to make a video of your work, just post it in the comments below. If you want to improve your revision, write something now using these skills that I've just taught you. Because remember, that's how our students started, by writing the description and then rewriting it based on their teacher's advice. And that's why this student has become so good at writing. They work hard. Do the work, and honestly, I promise you, your writing will also be brilliant. Well, don't forget to subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you soon on my channel.